Who Watches the Rewatchers, a Buffy rewatch podcast.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to Who Watches the Rewatchers, our podcast rewatching through Buffy the Vampire Slayer. My name is Jarrod Longbonds, and I'm with my friend Alan Barnes. How you doing today, pal?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. Last night, watched a little Buffy episode 7 of season 1, the Angel episode.
It is finally upon us.
It is finally upon us. I have some more shade to throw on the character of Angel today, but this is the first episode where I think we start to see Joss Whedon and company start developing more about the myth of the vampire. And start developing a little bit, trying to nail down some bigger storylines that are going to be emerging, especially with Angel and Buffy. So on that level, I really, really liked it. There's some things that are cringeworthy as a dad, and some things that are definitely cringeworthy. We're going to get to it. So let's go ahead and dive in.
All right. So I'm going to do a synopsis, and as we do the synopsis, we will chat about the things that are jumping out at us. And the very first thing that jumped out at me as a visual storyteller is the very first shot, which is a moving, tilt pan, starts off with the sneakers of the Anointed, and I thought that was hilarious. It starts off with the sneakers, and then we pan up and we see the rest of the vampires, right?
Yeah.
And
what were the sneakers? Do you know?
Do what now?
You know what the sneakers were?
Well, they were for the Anointed, the little boy, right? So
do you know what kind of shoes?
What kind of shoes? Oh, I have no idea, man.
Okay, all right.
But I mean, the reason I thought it was funny was because Whedon's and company are really good at the counterpoint of here's something that's sort of super modern and what's the word I'm looking for here? Surface oriented. I can't think of more. And then counterposing that with trying to make something feel ancient and ominous and mystical.
Yeah, I mean the master in that same moment bent over, I think, and he's got like his coat or his over top, whatever you want to call it. It's got a cut of kind of a 19th century kind of high buttoned thing, but it's also leather.
Yeah.
So I noticed that too. And I thought, oh, that's kind of like a cool leather. Oh, okay. And it's kind of cut like an old world sort of thing.
Yeah. Totally. So in this moment, the master's upset because, the Slayer has killed another one of his family. And he's decided that something must be done. And he asks the Anointed, what should we do? And he says, what does he say? Annihilate her, something to that effect. He says, out of the mouths of babes, like this is something that just now occurred to them, right? So
he's quoting the Bible. I was just wondering how many people know that that's biblical. But I thought the same thing. I thought you needed some anointed little dude with a weird voice and dark eyes to tell you what you. We should win. We should win the game.
Yeah, right.
Coach.
So he's in this cavern also with Darla, and Darla is the blonde vampire from our first scene of the series, and we're finally going to get to know a little bit about her in this episode.
Actress Julie Benz played her, and she was the wife of Dexter. She played the wife of Dexter in Dexter, the Showtime show with Michael C. Hall.
Yep.
And she's an interesting character. And I really, really love that she was in this role. I thought she did a great job in this role.
Absolutely. So the master decides that the way he's going to deal with the Slayer is, rather than sending in his own people, he's going to bring in the three. And I think that what I really think is funny about this very first season of Buffy, before we get into any of the other stuff, is how many times all of these like vampires have shown up that are supposed to be like super special vampires that have writings about them for centuries, and Buffy like knocking them down.
She vanquishes them quickly. Yes. It's like, yeah, it's so funny. It sets up this kind of whole, like, we can come up with whatever villain we want and give them some sort of mythological backstory. They must be so big and bad that they have developed. There are three of them. They're just called the Three. That's what they're known as the Three, and they're hired guns apparently.
Right.
Yeah, and they don't last long in the episode. That's the thing.
They don't. You really think they're going to be a big deal in the episode, and they don't make it past the first couple of acts, I don't think. But anyway, then we cut to the Bronze, and Buffy and Willow are setting up the sort of the thematic material for the episode, which is, Buffy's teenage desire to have a boyfriend. It's counterpointed with Willow's desire to also have a boyfriend, and of course, that Buffy is interested in Angel, but he's unattainable for whatever reasons she perceives him to be unattainable. And Willow's interest is in Xander, who is also unattainable for whatever reasons she perceives him to be unattainable. But it's really made funny because then we see Xander, this unattainable boy that Willow is fixated on, just being a complete goofball, right?
Dancing, tries to dance with somebody, her boyfriend shoos him off. Then he steps on Cordelia's $200 shoe. Yep. And he's like, okay. We should not forget about the fact that this is the party at the Bronze. It's the pre-fumigation party. So there are roaches running around everywhere, which gives us the strange setup that the fact that the Bronze is going to be closed and empty for a few days while it's being fumigated to kill the roaches. And gross it is that they're like collecting roaches around the bar-ish area while they're sitting there talking about boys, and no one's really that bothered by it. It's just like their house stinks so bad. It's so hellmouthy that they're going to go hang out at a place infested with roaches that run out and crawl all over you, basically. So that's the setup. I wonder who came up with that setup, but that's such a weird thing.
Yeah, right. Totally agreed.
Yeah.
So Buffy decides she's going to go home, and on the way home, she encounters the Three.
Yes, she feels, and you find out later, she felt like Angel might be walking behind her, right?
Yep.
She had some Spidey sense, some Buffy sense.
Yep.
And it's the Three, and they actually get the best of her really quickly. Like they kind of pin her down a little bit, and then Angel shows up, and there's a bit of fisticuffs, which is one of my favorite phrases that they often use in Buffy. Fisticuffs, usually by Xander. There's a bit of fisticuffs, and Angel, for being some tough guy, he gets wounded, and then they run off. They run off to Buffy's house for safety from the Three, right? Like they're kind of ran. It just knowing everything you know about Buffy and Angel, it's pretty sad, but they run off, and Angel and Buffy are now in her home. Joyce, her mother, and it's just all the kind of ham-fisted, schlocky sort of teen drama. It's like, oh, let me go get the first aid kit to clean you up, and so he takes off his tank top T-shirt, and he's got his little owie, and then it shows this really modern looking tattoo on his back, which you find out later is really, really old.
Right.
But it's a chance for him to take off his shirt in front of her, So that's great. You're channeling my inner Xander. What? You got naked?
Hilarious.
Yeah.
So they get into Buffy's house, and part of the reason they're in Buffy's house is because the Three cannot enter. This is the first time we get the little piece of vampire lore.
Yes, we get, unless they're invited in.
Unless they're invited in. This is super common in lots of vampire stories, at least in the modern era. And Buffy decided they were going to use that one for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I guess she must have. I didn't stop it and go back. Did she tell Angel, you can come in? Did she do something like that?
I think that what she did was, let's go to my house or something to that effect, and so I guess that counted as an invitation.
Okay, all right.
And then Angel's the one who tells Buffy, don't worry, they can't get in unless they're invited. And she says something to the effect of, I've heard that, but I've never tested it, or something like that.
Okay.
So then Buffy's mom comes home.
Yeah, she comes home and, Buffy tries to kind of shoo her away from the door. Head off to bed. I'll bring you some tea. Meanwhile, Angel's quickly getting redressed and he pops around the corner and Joyce is like, who's this guy?
Yeah, right.
And it's that awkward moment that some people have grown up having where mom or dad catches person of the opposite sex in the house and she's like, time for bed, Buffy. See your friend out.
Right.
And she trusts them enough just to head upstairs and Buffy and Angel pull the old trickaroo and act like he's leaving, but they both head up to her room for the night, which I don't understand why. Like, this is where I'm like, oh, come on. Like, he can go home. Like, you were okay with your mom walking home at night, I guess, but you're too afraid that he's going to be ambushed by the three he's got to spend the night. Okay, fine. I got it. It gets to show some chivalric nature, I guess, of dear Angel, while they're in their room and they're making pouty face at each other. She's like, you can sleep on the bed. And he's like, no, I'll sleep on the floor. And it's just all a little hammy to me, but that's what happened.
Yeah. I agree. There's a lot of I don't know. I think that one of the big things that they were trying to get across in this, trying to look at it as a, from the perspective of what the intention of what they were trying to accomplish was. I think that what they were trying to say was exactly what you just said. Number one is there's some sort of chivalric nature going on here that's going to make Buffy feel even closer to Angel, because there really hasn't been anything to make her feel close to Angel previously other than, the fact that she thinks he's cute or whatever. And then I think the second thing that they were doing was they needed a scene where they set up some of the bits about Angel that Buffy would find out, like the full story of later. Why are you fighting vampires? Oh, because
right,
to do it. Well,
I killed my parents family a long time ago. She goes, so sort of a revenge gig, or
right. And I think that all that stuff was what they had to figure out how to convey in a way that didn't feel like an information dump, and it felt like it was somehow an emotional scene. And I'm not sure they totally pulled that off. Like I've said before, there's a storytelling for screenplay writing. There's like a rule that every scene has to have some sort of emotional change happen through it, or the only purpose of the scene was exposition. And so I think that the idea of creating the tension of, will they, won't they, from a sexual tension perspective, and trying to raise that all the way through the scene, I think is what they were trying to accomplish. And to your point, I don't think they pulled it off. I think it does actually feel like a giant exposition dump with some schlocky dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also makes her vulnerable through the night if he is in fact a bad guy. But it just feels 1990s, so 90s cringe to me. But that's cool. I love the shows, So I'll take it too. Angel, do you snore? No, but it's been so long since I've been around someone, in this situation to know. So there you go. Okay.
I will say this though, very quickly, is one of the metaphors they're going for here is the idea that, teenage girls often end up with slightly older boyfriends, it's pretty common for like a sophomore girl to be going out with a junior or senior boy. And I think that it's kind of hilarious that they pushed this idea to someone who's 200 years older than Buffy, right?
Yeah. That I do too. I agree with that.
So the next scene goes back to the school and the library, and we get a little bit of more information about the three from Giles, because he is the best expositor of the show. And they try to hang a lantern on this, with Willow saying, how do you know this stuff? And Giles says, well, Willow says, how do you know this stuff? I don't feel like I know anything that's going on. And Giles says, well, you aren't here from midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning researching it. and that's kind of the I think one of the things that I don't know, was kind of a fun little aside, this idea that, well, if you don't feel like you know anything, maybe read a book. I don't know.
Yeah, I got that too. And I also thought about the last episode when we talked about the cage in the library, and you asked me maybe why, and I surmised that the weapons and things are there. And we do later on see in this episode that behind the cage in the library is where she's got like the crossbows and the quarterstaff and all that stuff all hit. So yeah, I don't know if you saw that too, but
I did.
This is where you get that information about the three, and Giles is has got no life apparently, and then it's a jump cut right from that to the Master's lair, and it's probably, at least it's the wink wink self-aware stuff about Buffy that I really like. Yep, they made this mythological trio of vampires seem like the big bads, and then Giles just totally lets you down. He's like, oh, we don't have to worry about them anymore because now that they failed, they're going to offer themselves in sacrifice to the Master. And you're like, huh? That's it? And you cut away, and there's the Master talking to Darla and the Anointed, and he's like, are you going to kill them? And he's like, kind of, what's the point? It'll bring me little joy to kill them. And that's the whole bait switch. You think he's going to be merciful, and then Darla stands behind him and starts killing him. And he goes, I said little joy.
Sometimes that's enough. Right.
But it was hilarious. I mean, it was cute, and it's like winking and smiling at you all the time, which is what you come to love about Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Sure.
Some of that self-knowledge is fun.
And that is followed up with the scene that you were hinting at a moment ago, where Giles tries to train Buffy to make sure that she is better with weapons in case the three do come back. And we have this...
I got straight up questions about his training methods. No, you can't use the what's that?
Crossbow.
You got to learn the basics on the quarterstaff. And I'm like, come on, man, please. If she was entering into a battle training seminar for the first time, maybe, but she's got to shoot these things from far away. I mean, let her have the thing that protects her the most, the thing that she can shoot from.
Sure.
But whenever, it's all just an opportunity to get her to kick his butt with a quarterstaff, which she does, and that's cute.
Yeah, it was very cute. And again, they're doing a pretty good job of helping you understand exactly. I think the purpose of the scene was for us to understand how good of a fighter Buffy is, naturally and intuitively, because of how she assesses situations, without them basically doing an information dump where they're like, well, Buffy's going to be able to fight these things well because she, that whole business. So, again, doing a really good job with keeping the storytelling fairly visual, and giving information to the audience that helps us understand how Buffy's able to accomplish things and why she does things without it being, a burden for us to listen to, large swaths of dialogue. I feel like I see that a lot in current TV shows. There was a much beloved Star Wars TV show last year called Andor. And I don't dislike Andor, by the way. I think that there are a lot of things about it that are really good. But the biggest thing that I disliked about Andor was the only way you could possibly comprehend what was happening in it most of the time was to listen to these 3, 4, 5 minute long monologues by various characters throughout the show. And we don't get
I agree with you. In fact, I saw this several years, maybe 10 years ago, the Shonda Rhimes show about the Fixer.
Mm-hmm.
What was her name? Carrie something. Anyway, she works for the president. I can't remember the name of the show right now. But Kerry Washington is the fixer for the president, and they have a romantic relationship in it. And she has her firm, and she often calls them the white hats, and there's the black hats. And I watched the show. It was huge. People loved the show. And I theorized that it was a product of social media, but you were listening to monologues of moralistic speeches at each other more than dialogue.
Right.
And that just seemed like the stance of social media, where you're just kind of putting it out there, hear it all, boom, rather than back and forth. That's my theory. But to your point about like ways of doing it that are creative, I think the next scene is just that. Buffy comes home, and this is where I'm groaning more than Angel spent the night. It's that he stayed there all day.
Yeah.
I mean, like he couldn't have got out like when it was before the sun came up or whatever, but no, he stayed there all day. And while she's there, she sees that she's talking to Angel. She sees her diary moved. And then that gives her opportunity to say all these things that were written in the diary that he must have misunderstood. And, you know, and it just really was able to give you all the information about how much she's been thinking and dreaming or obsessing or just, you know, whatever you want to call it about Angel. And then it's also all the tension is popped with a bit of humor. He says, Buffy, your mom, when she came here to straighten up, she moved the diary. I didn't read it, I promise, because I'm a noble, chivalric sort of man.
Right.
You know,
Right.
And then it carries us forward, you know, so their tensions are getting closer, more intimate. That's building up. You're finding out a little bit more, or at least than the characters are in front of you. And it's setting up the scene for what's going to happen next.
And what happens next is we finally get the smoochies.
That's what exactly I was setting you up for. We get with the smoochies.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, this moment, and they just can't help it anymore. Everyone's too attractive, and they kiss.
Yep. And then, of course, Angel gets excited and vamps out. And this is the first time we understand as an audience that he is, in fact, a vampire. The first time you saw this, did you know this was coming? Because you see, here's the thing. I knew he was a vampire because by the time I started watching Buffy, the show already existed, right?
I can't tell you. I'm trying to think whether or not it was in the previews, like when they would like in television, they would show you like, you know, basically advertise the episode coming up.
Mm-hmm.
They may have shown him vamp out. I don't know. I certainly think you can see it coming with the way the show's being presented, but I don't remember. I don't remember. I remember thinking back in those days when I was watching it that he went from being love interest good guy to bad guy really quickly. Like the transition happened very fast, which we'll talk about when we get to all that stuff. Yeah, season 2. But he recoils and he's got the total vamp out, animal face. She screams and, you know, and he dives out the window. And now she's got to go report back, right? Which is like, for her, she's brokenhearted and sad and terrified. Giles is protective, and one person is very caring of her, and that's Willow, who's like, oh, you must be so disappointed. Like, you really like him.
Sure.
And then there's one person who's excited. Hilarious. Well, the only thing you do with vampires, Buff, let me mansplain it to you. The only thing you do is you kill them.
Right.
So I'm okay if you want to go kill him.
And then he tries to get Giles to back him up, right? Mm-hmm. Giles to back him up. Isn't that right, Giles?
Isn't that's all we do here? You are the Slayer. And so but Giles is researching Angel, and then they have some false Latinized Angelus or whatever. The one with the angel face. Oh yeah, does he ever? Oh yeah. I'm like, oh gosh.
You know, we'll talk about it more when it comes up again. But one of the most hilarious things about Angel / Angelus is every once in a while they'll have like a new person on the show, like a new character or something, and it's obvious that they have a new director and they don't know how to say Angelus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they'll call him Angelus or all kinds of other nonsense, right? Yeah. And a lot of time the funniest one to me is Spike, right? He calls him Angelus the first time he sees him. And you know, he's supposed to have known Angel for, you know, 150 years or whatever. And so the fact that he doesn't know how to say the name, I think is very, very funny.
Yeah.
When you said the falsified Latin.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it is Latin, but it just you know, it all has the reek of ancient and old. And yeah, so the storyline, very, very basically, that Giles discovers is that he shunned the company of other vampires when he came to America, and he stopped preying on humans. But there is no knowledge of anything beyond that, except for that he was particularly vicious when he was with the other vampires and when he was known to kill them.
Yep.
And now we're kind of getting the big twistiness of the show here. It is that Darla is really now the Master's main weapon, and she's going to go out, and she's trying to wreak havoc. And in this episode, they have scenes where Darla is creeping around Angel's crypt or wherever he is, and they got some sort of backstory, and she's clearly going to try to do something to wreak a little havoc. And you also get the point that she'd very much like for Angel to come back on her team and start going after things. So Darla ends up coming over to Buffy's house, ringing the doorbell. Meanwhile, at the same time, Buffy's studying with Willow about the Civil War and Reconstruction. Darla comes over and says, I'm supposed to study the Revolutionary War with her. So she invites her in, and Joyce walks her to the kitchen and says, well, would you like something to eat? And Darla's like, yes, of course, right? Mm-hmm. And something big or something big. Yeah. She opens the fridge and you see Darla's Van Dyke, something big, and cut scene. And, Darla's going to move in. But we cut scene, and where's Buffy? And Buffy has a reason to come home. When she does, at least. No. Actually, what happens is Angel is coming to save the day from and to rescue Joyce or Buffy from Darla, and he breaks in, and it's just I don't know. It's just kind of clunky because, of course, Darla's taken a little taste of Joyce. Joyce is passed out. We find out later from Giles the side effect of being bitten by a vampire is mild anemia. Is that what he says? Mild effects?
Mild anemia. That's what he says.
Yeah. So she passes out, and Darla's like tempting Angel, who you now know is subsisting off of blood donation packs in his fridge at his place because of a previous scene. And he vamps out. He's getting excited by the smell of the blood, but he's obviously not going to go into that. And as Darla flees, Angel goes and collects Joyce, but that's when Buffy shows up and sees a vamped out Angel, her mother passed out, puncture holes in her neck with blood coming out, and she just knows that it's been Angel who's done this. Mm-hmm. And it cuts to a very cool shot of Angel going through a picture window.
Yep.
It's like the most destructive way to get him out of the house. Mm-hmm. And she says, it's a very dramatic teen drama, dramatic moment. Stay away from me and my mother, I'll kill you kind of thing.
Yep.
But then she runs in and calls 911.
Yep.
And then we cut to the hospital, right? That's probably some fun bit. You must like that, right? Joyce is kind of in a sort of stupor, recounting what happened. Your friend came over.
Which Buffy assumes is Angel, but it's actually
Angel. Right. That's the big twisteroo. Maybe I fell on a barbecue fork. Mm-hmm. We don't have a barbecue fork.
Now
Giles said, who are you again? Oh, I'm just here to pay my respects. And you're librarian? Oh, man. This is really
does care about the.
Yeah, it's really great. I love that. That's a really good school.
Right.
But that all the information makes them all spring into action.
Yep. And now Xander telling Buffy to go kill Angel has a lot more weight, and so that's what you're gonna do.
Yes, it does. And so she's gonna go and she's gonna take care of him. Meanwhile, Joyce is still talking with Giles, and she finds out that. She says that, and Buffy's poor friend Darla must have been there and terrified when that happened. He goes, wait, with Darla?
Yeah.
And that's when he finds out, no, this wasn't Angel at all, but this was this other vampire. And so then the rest of the Scoobies spring to go find out, to go intervene, to go do something. And meanwhile, Buffy's having a showdown where of all places with Angel? The Bronze, which is conveniently empty for fumigation.
Right.
Did you like this? Did you like this setup in the Bronze and how they react to each other?
From the perspective of knowing a bit about production and how little money they had to make this show, I thought they did a pretty good job. If you're trying to say, if the question is, could this have been handled better with a bigger budget, with more sets, with with a bigger cast. I mean, there are all kinds of things they could have done that could have made it more. But for what they did, I think for the budget they had, I thought they did a pretty good job. You know, I mean,
yeah, okay. So given that, I'm thinking more like when I asked the question, you know, they set Angel up in the shadows, and he looks at it, he's like, "Let's do this, right? Like, let's get it over with." And he jumps, and it's like it's kind of epic.
Yeah,
you can tell they were going.
I think that what they were trying to get at was this idea that you know, Angel thinks at this point we're led to believe that he's tried to be a good person for the last 100 years. We don't know why yet. You know, we know that there was some change. We're about to find out why. But he needs he now feels, because of what's just happened with Buffy, that he's never going to be able to get over his past. So there's a little bit of a just kill me already so that I don't have to deal with this anymore kind of a vibe. There's very much a self-sacrificial thing happening at the moment.
Well, I was reminisced of some camera of the Ninth Power horror film I saw with Lou Diamond Phillips when I was younger. Some of the way the light shines over his face and blocks out his face as he's jumping through this kind of industrial room. And then there's some John Woo with the two pistols later on that Darla has, but when Buffy's laying down, shooting her crossbow and it sliding her back. I mean, I thought it was pretty cool in an attempt, you know, to bring in some different aesthetics to it. But as they're going kind of after each other, they're doing that thing that is very reminiscent of Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker.
Sure.
Fighting and talking for exposition's sake, fighting to get to, and also exchanging information. And you find out along the way, Angel tells Buffy about his unique status as a vampire.
With his blood. Before we get too much further into that, I do want to make a comment about something you just said. You were talking about the light cast across his eyes, and that's the only part of it that you can see. That specific lighting technique has a name. It's called Shatner lighting.
I like it.
It's named after William Shatner.
Shatner has a lot of other things in media that are named for him or he's inspired, but we'll talk about those another time. But that's awesome.
Sure.
Why now? Why is it called that? Why they do for Shatner?
Because I'm about to really nerd out here, man. Forgive me.
Do it, man. Do it.
In the second episode of Star Trek, which it's an episode that plays like almost like a submarine battle between the Enterprise and a Romulan ship.
Yes, Romulans. Yes.
Yeah.
That's me being I don't know.
The episode's called Balance of Terror, and in this episode they did that specific lighting gag a whole bunch of times, and it was one of the first times that people, I guess, really noticed this lighting trick, although it had been used previously. And but because Star Trek was so ubiquitous, you know, a lot of production designers just started calling it Shatner lighting.
That's cool, man. I did not like Star Trek, so I was like, yes, Ron, because it's not my jam, but
yeah, sure.
That's great. Okay, well, I'm gonna geek out in a minute because Angel tells them that there was a girl about your age, although he says not that bright. Who you know, and he refers to her as a Romani, which is the technical and accurate description of an ethnic people group throughout Europe, who often people were called gypsies, which is not a term that is appropriate very much. It's used in a very derogatory way.
Sure.
But these are travelers, and there's a culture, an ethnic, cultural / religious / historical tie for these folks. And they've often been on the wrong end of discrimination throughout society. And there's a lot of folklore, a lot of superstition, a lot of magic, a lot of blending of religion with, especially the Irish travelers blend a lot of kind of pagan ideas and magical ideas with Roman Catholicism, this weird kind of blend. And so, especially in 20th century film, TV, sci-fi, fantasy, you could always pull out a gypsy curse, right? It was always a thing. I mean, it's part of the Wolfman saga and so on. And so basically the curse from Angel, one of the leaders of the tribe or the community, curses Angel to basically have his soul, if you will. What you find is that a vampire is soulless. The soul or the inner life of the human person is gone. Metaphysically, they don't know or describe what that is. But a demon has set up shop in that life. And Giles says in other places they may look like, act, sound, have the personality and memories of the person, but it's not the person, it's this demon.
Right.
Which this becomes really fascinating from just a philosophical point of view. So then what is the soul?
Right.
In a sense, that you could be given for thinking this is a very modernistic, post-Cartesian. That's a fancy word for saying after Descartes. Descartes had this idea that the soul isn't of your brain, it's the seat of your soul. The soul is sort of this immaterial essence of your physical body. And if you ever heard the phrase, give up the ghost, it means that what's left you is your soul. That is not classically Christian or even Aristotelian, an understanding of what a soul is, that this is a separate immaterial part of ourselves. That's more Platonic, but it's also much later in the concept of Western philosophy. So I would say that in a more traditional Christian sense, the soul, this spirit, this thing that we talk about, gets really talked about through people who studied Aristotle, like Thomas Aquinas. And the soul is this form of the body. The soul and body are not these distinct things, but they're like co-mingled together. Right. There's a sense in which a dead body, for a lot of ancient thinkers, you wouldn't call a body, you would call it a corpse. To be a body needs to be animated with soul. So like the soul is almost like the life of the body. It's not the case that you have a soul, you are a soul. And it's also not the case that you have a body, you are a body. So interestingly enough, the way that the vampire seems to start working here, and I know they probably just wrote these easy categories, but it becomes developed over time, especially with the character of Spike.
Right.
The way, what's interesting about that is that a vampire is soulless, so their interiority, their inner being is gone. However, they may look the same, they may have the same personality, they may have the same traits, they may have the same all that. So there's something of their identity that is wrapped up in their body. You cannot distinguish the interior life of a person or the conscience or the inner self. You cannot separate it completely from their body, which I think is really, really right. Mm-hmm. But then metaphysically or theologically or whatever avenue you want to go in, they really don't yet define or know how to define what a soul is. And I think what happens throughout all of Whedon's oeuvre, to use that fancy word, is there's this really interesting secular understanding of the soul that is almost an upside down or inversion of the Christian soul.
Interesting.
And I wrote about it for a paper I presented at Oxford on his show Dollhouse. I think his show Dollhouse really, really kind of shows the body and the interior and the exterior of a life being so wedded together. And then I wrote about it also, and I published in this book called Theology on the Undead. Paffenroth and other John Morehouse were editors. I wrote an essay called Vampires Are People to Personalism in the Buffyverse. And I show that through the character of Spike, what the soul ultimately does anyway in that show is a similar thing that the soul does for Christian thinking, right? So, but it's just, it's disconnected from the concept of God. So second, at any rate, it's fascinating already to think that Angel could be both. So most vampires, the soul is gone and there's a demon inside. Their physical form, their body maintains their personality. It maintains their memory and all that. But this demon has got control of the gears, got control of the engine. And the soul's just gone. Maybe it's heaven, hell, who knows? And we'll find out in the Buffy world, there's dimensions of heavens and hells and other life. Sure. It gets complicated. But in Angel, there is an ensouled vampire because he's a vampire, it's still dominated by a demon, or there's still a demon. There's something diminished about the soul that's there. What it means is he's got a conscience. All that the soul does for Angel is it gives him a sense of conscience, so he could be a proper person again. Vampires are persons diabolical. They are parasitic in the utmost sense. But the ensouled person is able to be a person in the sense that they're able to define themselves by relationship, and relationships of self-giving love and charity.
Right.
So his vampirism, he's able to be ensouled. So he has the self-giving relational sense. However, the vampire quality extends him, gives him this immortal life, and it also creates in him a sort of strange, almost like an addict, and a life of an addict, where he has to have a really restrained life to keep things in control. Otherwise, he'll spin up and go out of control and become a diabolical person. Wow, that was nerdy.
I love it.
I don't think 90s teenage TV was interested in that, but it is interesting to me. Even the concept of letting a vampire in your house, I will get my vampire folklore out and tell you where that comes from, because there's all these things developed over time. There's two kinds of vampires: the cinematic and literary, and then the folkloric, and they push in on each other at different points. But it's interesting that you draw from all these different traditions and things, and ultimately, when you're done with Buffy as a show, you have a highly developed metaphysic that really tells us a lot about the good life, tells us a lot about the meaning of life and the meaning of individual persons and relationship.
Which I think is the important thing about Buffy, what you just said. And a lot of times I'll hear people talking about other shows that they feel are quote unquote like Buffy. Like I saw a meme about this yesterday related to a show called Grimm. And I watched Grimm, and I liked Grimm, and Grimm was an enjoyable show, but
it's not as good.
It didn't have any of the it has all the surface of Buffy and none of the depth of Buffy.
Yeah.
And maybe even a little bit more well produced. And when you talk about surface, there's probably a lot, it came later. The effects were better. They certainly had a higher budget than Buffy had because of reasons. And so from a production value standpoint, there's probably a lot to like in Grimm more than Buffy. But from a content perspective, I think that most of the shows that tried to be like Buffy that came later didn't really figure it out. They got the surface and they didn't get the spirit.
I agree with you. Well, in this case, as far as we'll go here with Angel, I likened the demon in him that makes him a vampire to being something like an addict, because in his confessing of everything, he tells her, "I did not bite your mom, but I wanted to kill her, right? Or I wanted to bite her." And he says, "I wanted to kill you. I've wanted to feed on you, right? Like,
right.
And an alcoholic or a drug addict may want to do the things, but they do things so that they actively put practices in life so that they don't give into those baser desires." And that's what I mean by person diabolique or diabolical person. Like the French concept is kind of weightier. We could talk about that, but a person, and this is a deeply metaphysical concept. We just think of a person as any human individual, but the concept of person is so thick and rich philosophically.
Sure.
And I'll get more into it as we go on, but it comes up in the Western thought as it comes from like one sense of relationship. Like a person is a relation between a self in relation to another self, and a relation to its own self, and a relation to God. That is some weird mouth tangle thing I just said. That's kind of a bad paraphrase of Soren Kierkegaard.
Okay.
But it's about relations. Like a person is only a person, a human individual, because of their ability to relate. It's the relationship that makes the person, right? The ability to have actions of charity and love and then also reflection back into your life. And an addict begins thinking less and less about other persons and more just the addiction, the impulses, right? And can become destructive. And so that's what he's confessing. Yeah, I wanted to do these things, but I didn't do any of them because he's in control. At this point, he's in control of his desire, of his base desire. And that's why he lives. That's why he's got all these limits. That's why he can't have the relationship with Buffy. He can't be around. He's around blood bags. I mean, he's tortured in some way.
So this scene ends with Angel killing Darla as opposed to Buffy killing Darla, and I think that everything that you just said leads me to believe that this is a metaphor for him killing his old life in favor of the new life he's trying to take on.
I absolutely think so. And as a nerdy aside that it is not theological, philosophical, or vampiric, I want you to know that Julie Benz is sitting crisscross applesauce as she sits up with two guns, and she stands up from there without using any other position. She doesn't put her hand to the floor. And I thought, wow, that's a great mobility exercise. And I really wish I could do that right now. I just was really impressed with her mobility.
That's hilarious.
I've been trying to get from the crisscross applesauce to standing up without touching anything lately because of some mobility problems. And I was like, wow, I was so impressed.
Well, so even though Darla dies in this episode, Darla will be back in a few years.
She will.
Yeah.
She was too good. They set up too good of a character right there. So yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing I felt. I felt like what you said is right. Angel is plot. His narrative change is there. He's killing his old past. I mean, he's doing away with it. This is supposed to be something of a death blow to it. Mm-hmm. But I also thought, man, they started making her character really interesting, and that's a shame she's gone. So
Yeah. Well, no one's ever dead, right? In the TV shows. So then we cut back to the Master, who is just devastated that his main tool, Darla, is gone, and the Anointed tries to pacify him, saying we don't need her, and the Master is just devastated by all of it. But he comes to a point where he's like, okay, we're gonna deal with Buffy, and we're gonna deal with Angel as a result of these events.
Yes, and he was hoping that Angel would sit at his right hand, and you got the sense that okay, now we're letting the lid up and lid off and show you that there's this that Angel was more known. He was not just this one shadowy figure. Now I think they're coming to terms with the fact they got to build that story out. Yep. And so yeah, so he used to be a bad boy. We know that. And then there's this event at the Bronze. This is the after party, and what's the difference between the before fumigation party and the after fumigation party? Nothing except for Xander says the roaches are hardier.
Right.
I think it's
Yeah.
hilarious.
After too much cheesy dialogue, Xander elevates this one.
That's right. Yep. So Buffy goes to thank Angel and say they can't get involved. It's dangerous for them both. And Xander can't watch, and so he turns his back and he's looking at Willow, saying, "What are they doing? What are they doing?" Just as long as they're not kissing. And of course, they're having this long goodbye kiss, which is not going to be goodbye. It's just teeing them up for more. But
in this first season of Buffy, they have Angel wearing like a blazer a lot, and this I think is one of the first times I've seen the blazer. And I don't know how we got from the blazer to the leather jacket in a couple years.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard costume makers say that they try to make him look a little more old world. And it is a 3/4 length jacket. It's not a blazer. It's an overcoat.
Okay.
So it's a little longer. He's tall, so they can do he doesn't look short. Like Spike is shorter, and with the long coat, he looks shorter. Everything elevates his height and his stature. Intentionally, I think. But yeah, I don't know how they get to the leather either. Maybe just costuming. I'm not sure. Yeah. But and when they pull away, speaking of costuming, they kiss. Angel has the cross that he given her on the first episode was on her neck, and it was scorched into his, which is cute. But I'm just going, there's no way that her cross was touching him as they were kissing, but whatever, I'm not going to quarrel with the whole damn point is that he was so into her, he would deal with the pain because he is tortured.
Right.
And that's how we leave it. So, yeah, so I'm glad we finally got here. I am in this first season because we're starting to get into the larger mythology stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think it kind of helps. And maybe they knew this is where they were going at the season 1 or episode 1, but this starts to kind of like help start making me feel a little more calm about Angel. Okay, now we're starting to get some of these storylines that are going to continue to be built on, and to kind of start figuring out a little bit more about this universe.
That's right.
That's what
No, you're absolutely right. And so I guess that's it for this episode. But
are there any final takeaways from you?
I mean, I think I've said most of what I had to say along the way. I like the fact that this is the first episode where I feel like they're beginning to expand the mythology, and I think that we nerds love the mythology. Like, what's the bigger point of the entire thing? Kind of a question. But again, one of the big things that I still love about this era of TV, and not just Buffy, but a lot of other shows from this time period, is this idea that even if there's a bigger story that we're going to have unfold over the years, this felt like a satisfying chunk of story. There was a beginning, middle, end just in this piece. Whereas these days when I'm watching TV of this character, I often don't feel that there was a satisfying chunk of story. The way TV set up these days for genre television like this is we need to watch, a season, or in some cases an entire series, before we get a satisfying chunk of story. And that bothers me. I think that the whole concept of a show, I'm doing that in air quotes right now, show. The whole idea of a show is that, as much as I want to geek out about all of the larger points of things and how great the metaphors are and everything else, the point of a show is to entertain. And if I don't feel entertained from watching a single episode of a show, I'm bothered. And I think that a lot of that is happening on TV these days.
Okay. Well, my little takeaway is a challenge now to think about how the show, how the story presents the human, right? What a person is, what a vampire is, and side by side, because I think that I find television and film as cultural artifacts to help us deal with, especially monster movies and horror. It helps us deal with and confront the anxieties that we have, the fears we have in a given age period. And also it's a way of us dealing with our popular conceptions of the self. Right. And so the self, what is the self? And I think it's an interesting what it's offering. And we'll keep watching that as we go. Yeah.
All right. Next up is I, Robot, You, Jane.
Oh, I love the title.
All right.
All right. Excited to see you then, dude.